Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. It's been no secret. Lincoln Riley, this USC program, have been one of the more aggressive teams in the country in this 2025 cycle, currently sitting at a top 5 class in the country. And for what it sounds like, USC's not slowing down anytime soon in this 2025 cycle. And as we get into the month of June, these official visits kind of going on, you're starting to get a little bit more of a clear picture in terms of the targets that USC is really going after in this 2025 cycle. Want to dive into some of my favorite offensive targets for this USC program. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to give a massive shout out to the USC fans. I don't know if there's a fan base across the country that cares more about the recruiting trail than USC. You guys know I love talking the recruiting trail. Y'all know I love talking this USC program. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the boys. It's going to be an extremely busy next couple of weeks and months, breaking down commitments, previewing official visit lists. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, for the USC fans, I would love to hear some of your favorite offensive targets for this USC program as we get into the summer. I learned a ton from you guys. You guys always shout out some prospects that maybe I need to dive into the film a little bit more. So let it fly in the comment section. Let's get into some of my top targets. And let's just start quickly with Julian Lewis. And we haven't talked a ton about Julian Lewis. He's been committed to USC for quite a long time. And I'm not one to get on and track every single movement that Julian Lewis is making on the recruiting trail. At the end of the day, there are going to be a lot of other people that want to talk a lot about Julian Lewis. You got to get the clicks somehow. The way I look at Julian Lewis is this has been one of the most coveted quarterbacks since his 8th grade year. And so he is going to take some visits. Obviously, programs are going to continue to go after him. I sit here, and USC fans kind of know how I sit on this. I am not going to worry about the quarterback position with Lincoln Riley and USC until I'm given a reason. And I look at this quarterback room and say Miller Moss, Jada Maeva, Julian Lewis coming in 2025 and say, there's no reason right now for me to be worried about USC, what they're doing at the quarterback position. At the end of the day, the track record with Lincoln Riley and quarterbacks, it's just too strong for me to sit here and worry about the quarterback spot. So Julian Lewis locked into USC until we hear otherwise. Want to get into some more uncommitted targets that I really like, and I want to start with a guy that we talked about a little bit later last week, and he took an official visit to USC this weekend. 4-star wide receiver CJ Wiley from the state of Georgia. Now, USC has had just a ton of success going into the state of Georgia and landing some of these top targets. And at the wide receiver position, very similar to the quarterback position, these kids want to go play for a Lincoln Riley offense. And you look at CJ Wiley, watched a little bit more of him this morning. The more I watch him, the more I just think Jacoby Lane. This is a guy that is such a big body, but I think more importantly, runs exceptionally well. I mean, this is a guy that clocked a 10.8 in the 100-meter dash, and you start talking about 6'4", 200 pounds, a kid going into his senior year with the long speed that CJ Wiley has, and say, this could be a guy that is a legitimate deeper third threat for this USC offense. It's no secret Lincoln Riley wants to push the ball down the field, and the more film you watch, the more you get excited, because what do you want to do with really fast wide receivers? You want to put hands on them at the line of scrimmage. CJ Wiley, 6'4", 200 pounds, a ton of defensive backs. They just can't deal with the physicality that CJ Wiley has. And when you can't deal with the physicality and you can't run with this kid down the field, that's when you get one of those special wide receivers. I'm a massive fan of CJ Wiley. The production as a junior, 68 catches for over 1,400 yards, averaging 22 yards per catch. This certainly backs up kind of how we feel about CJ Wiley. I would love to see this kid in a Lincoln Riley offense for USC. Next wide receiver I want to quickly talk about is Andrew Marsh. Not a ton of buzz around this kid, and I don't really know why. He's just kind of flying under the radar. And I think the thing I want to talk about with Andrew Marsh is elite movement skills. And that's something that when we talk about wide receivers on the recruiting trail, a lot of the conversation goes into the frame and verified track times. You turn on the film for Andrew Marsh, and yes, he is a decorated track and field athlete going back to his freshman year. You turn on the film and say, this is just one of the more polished wide receivers that you see in this 2025 cycle. He creates separation at an elite level. He makes defensive backs look silly, but then more importantly, he checks off a lot of the other boxes you want. Extremely physical at the catch point. But I think my favorite trait outside of the separation that he can create is, after the catch, this kid is an absolute weapon. And so you're getting a guy that can work vertically down the field, catch through contact and traffic. You're looking at a guy that can separate in those intermediate short route trees. And then you're looking at a guy that can create after the catch. What more do you want from a wide receiver? Andrew Marsh, maybe not the elite physical traits that you see top 20 national prospects kind of have, but then you turn on the film and say, this kid checks off every single box that you are looking for. Another state in Texas that USC has had a lot of success going down and landing these some commitments. He'll be on campus this weekend for USC. We'll see how that official visit goes. Last wide receiver I want to talk about, and that's Phillip Bell. And out of these three wide receivers, this is probably the wide receiver that I think USC has the best chance at landing. You look at Phillip Bell, one, just extremely productive during his high school career, over 2,500 yards his last 3 seasons. He'll be visiting USC at the end of the month in June, has been on campus plenty of different times. This is a kid that I think the favorite trait you have with Phillip Bell is what he can do at the contested catch point. 6'2", 200 pounds, a physical build, and then not necessarily blazing speed, but he's probably quicker than he is fast. But again, when you're talking about red zone targets, guys that can go up and make plays, the physicality, the body control, the coordination that this kid has, I think it's on another level. I think another top target for USC at the wide receiver position. And then the last two positions we got to talk about, one, the running back spot. I think USC has their 2 running backs they want to rock with already locked up. You look at the tight end position, and that seems to be a position that USC is not going after extremely hard. You look back to some of the guys that they brought in, Walter Matthews, Joey Olsen. I think USC feels pretty good about the future of that tight end room. Let's go to the offensive line, because that, again, is the biggest question mark for USC heading into the Big Ten is line of scrimmage play. You look at the offensive line and say, this is a very important position for USC to get right on the recruiting trail. It's one of the hardest positions to address in the transfer portal. You saw USC, they were able to address a lot of different positions. The offensive line is just hard for every program, and that kind of makes it that much more important to recruit the high school ranks while on the offensive line and get these guys developed. I look at a guy in Aaron Dunn, again, another guy we talked about late last week. The more film I watch, the more I do some reading on Aaron Dunn. 6'7", 290 pounds. He's a basketball player that averaged almost 18 points per game his junior year. And then you watch some of the basketball, I guess you call it film. I don't watch much basketball, and say, this kid's movement skills for somebody who is 6'7" and a half, it's exceptional. This is a kid that you want to bet on every single day of the week. He has a very nice build at 290. You can easily get him up to 315 pounds with that 6'7" frame. But you look at the length and the athleticism and the feet that this kid has, it's really hard to find truly high upside offensive tackle prospects. I think you're looking at one with a guy like Aaron Dunn from the state of Utah, was on campus for USC. Would love to see them get that one done. Last offensive lineman, another guy that we covered from Bishop Gorman. I'm going to mess up the name here. Ali Kalinivuvalu. Now, I know I messed up the name. Massive fan of what this kid can do on the offensive line. I think my biggest takeaway from this kid, again, another guy that was on campus for USC this weekend, he's about a high floor of a prospect as you can get. And I don't know if he has that first round NFL draft upside, but you look at what he's going to be. You watch the film, says he plays at tackle, can certainly kick in the guard. He's versatile, but he's super polished. This is one of those prospects that you look at and say, I have a hard time seeing him not be a starting offensive lineman for multiple years at the Power 5 level. That's one of the most important traits that you can have of an offensive lineman on the recruiting trail. Going back to why it's so important to recruit the offensive line class, you want to make sure you're hitting on your offensive linemen from the high school ranks, because it's hard to address in the transfer portal. I think there are some other positions that you can bet on upside, and if it doesn't work out, you can circle back to the transfer portal and address that position. The offensive line, you want to make sure you're hitting with these guys. I think this guy has, he's one of those guys that I'm just really confident is going to hit at the Power 5 level. Those are some of the names on the USC offensive side of the football that I really like. I'm diving into the defense, hopefully Wednesday afternoon, maybe Tuesday or Thursday morning. Take a look at my favorite targets for USC on the defensive side of the football. It's no secret that USC has put a massive priority on grabbing elite defenders in this 2025 class. Fired up for the next couple of weeks with this USC program on the recruiting trail. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys again. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.